Alright, getting close to my old place. Hopefully the stash in my lab is still golden. This looks like the right spot. Nice polygons.
In other news, the renegade scientist broke out of the Paradise Island maximum security facility. Trey Kincaid is still at large, heavily armed and extremely dangerous.
Okay,
Citizens of
plan B.
Babylon
Run for it!
pray for his swift capture. Amen.
Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully and welcome back to the Apocalypse Commentary. One which we are living through to this day. Tee-hee hoddle-ha, feel the burn kid, yippee-ki-yay motherfucker. I mean, I say that in jest, but I mean, this is legitimately one of my favourite levels in the game, because, well, I'm always a sucker for a good city aesthetic, and, given the cyberpunk nature of this game's setting, it's really sick, man, and, as you can possibly hear over my waffling, we also have some, excuse me, just finished having my dinner, and it was quite delicious. But yeah, as you heard over there with, Cirrus playing over there, you do have some licensed tracks which occasionally play whenever you're nearby excuse me, whenever you're nearby a music billboard thing, which we'll apparently have in the future. And, I think kind of is a thing in Japan, kind of. Or at least in, certain spots anyway. I don't know, it's just something I kind of wish, because I mean, I think I brought it up in the review as well, but it just kind of, it's just kind of amusing to me to know that at some point in the future we'll have stuff like System of a Down playing at, like, weird times of the day. Yeah, see, stuff like that, like, I mean, I'm not sure if it was just, like, emulation issues, or if it was something to do with, like, the PS1 copy, or just, like, a poor editing job from Neversoft's part, but, like, it really does feel like certain lines were edited around, and they were really being pressed for time, because, like, I mean, Neversoft did have a bit of a strict crunch time when it came to getting this game out in time for release on Halloween of 1998, so yeah, they really had to be on the ball with this stuff, and I guess they just didn't really have a lot of time to perfect things as much as they should. And I suppose if there is anything I can bring up from a gameplay perspective is that, well, first things first, more licensed tracks. And it is kind of apropos, because, like, this is also randomized. I can get anything from a Pose you're seeing here, a System of a Down, you know, Gear Horse, Cirrus, and all that kind of stuff. Again, it really does vary depending on, like a sort of randomization kind of factor. Yeah, kind of weird, but I will say it is kind of apropos that we do get to see Poe, considering, and again, I might be misremembering this, but I think the musician herself actually does have a bit of a role in this game, as Trey's ex-girlfriend, but then we'll see a little bit more of that later. In the meantime, we just need to get to his lab, and I guess gear up, because I suppose, and again, this is really me speculating here, but I'm guessing you probably weren't meant to access a lot of the weapons like the particle beam, pulse laser, and all that kind of stuff as early as we were. Like, we were probably going to go to Trey's lab, him and the person would get decked out with all sorts of weapons, and then, you know, guess take the fight to the Reverend, so to speak. I don't know, like, I mean, there's a lot of things that do feel really cut at the seams, and I think Neversoft did an admirable job trying to patch things up where they could. But again, it does feel noticeable that there just seems to be a lot of padding, and while the gameplay loop, I think, is fun enough to sustain itself, there is also something to be said about the very sparse levels of gameplay that you're going to be seeing here, because, like, I mean, you do have mild platforming elements, you know, as you saw in the sewer section, and a little bit later on here. And, you know, as things go on, you do get the impression that maybe the game is a little bit more padded. Excuse me. It was a little bit more padded to the point where the gameplay loop could be seen as a bit repetitive. And, you know, to that extent, I would agree, especially when it comes to commentary, because you don't really have much to talk about besides a jump and shoot man and, you know, a lot of the visuals that you're seeing here. And I think the game does a decent job in giving you a lot of visual spice, especially with something I'm going to be bringing up later on, but I'll hold my tongue on that. But, like, I mean, yeah, as I said in the first part, what you see is what you get. And, while it is very easy to die, you know, you're in the action enough to the point where you can pretty much get yourself outside of any jam. And speaking of jams, strap one on, it's time to jam. I have no idea what the fuck that quote even was. If it was like a reference to something, or if it was just something Bruce Willis said for the game, because action line, whammy wham 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 wuzzle, woozle, whatever. I don't know. But again, and something I also want to bring up, like, the game does have a bit of an irreverent sense of humor about itself, which I think is very in keeping with Neversoft, especially for what they did with the What If mode of Spider-Man on PS1. But at the same time, though, there is also the fact that there's just a lot of world building that I think goes underdeveloped. Like, as I mentioned beforehand, the Reverend being this, you know, massive leader for a lot of the people in this future is just thrown away in a line of dialogue. And Trey, being public enemy #1, is also just sort of treated with about as much reverence. Like, I mean, besides the fact that he just sort of popped up in a women's shower room, like, it just seems so bizarre that they never really capitalized on more of this. Again, I guess a lot of this would have had to have gone into the fact that they would have had to hire Bruce Willis to re-record these lines, but I mean, honest to goodness, I think the game probably would have benefited from a bit more of a redux in terms of its overall story structure and narrative, if that makes any sense. Like, I mean, because, like, I mean, I don't think this game really would have suffered without Bruce Willis. In fact, if anything, I think with less star power involved, they probably would have had more of the budget and resources to finish the game as Activision intended. Or at least give Neversoft, you know, the go-ahead to at least make the game in the way that they would want to make it. Because, I mean, like with a lot of Neversoft projects, like, I mean, they were given pretty free rein to do whatever they pleased, and there is also another something interesting to bring up, which I'll talk about a little bit after this, because we're seeing taxis, which implies that people are traveling around in this area, even though there's lava across the streets, and, like, people are going to work, and what even really is this future? Is this just something that people go through every day? Like, I mean, is the Reverend, like, ruling these people in fear or protecting them from these hellish abominations of their world falling apart? Like, again, like, I mean, this seems to be kind of normal for people, because, like, I mean, as some of the soldiers admit with their cries whenever, you know, you mow them down, like, I mean, they do imply that, you know, this is their first time on the job, or that they have wives and families, so I guess they have, like, a sense of civilization? Again, this is why I say it helps to establish these things. Like, I mean, I know it's therefore, you know, epic jokes and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, I think this really would have benefited with a bit more world building, and sadly, this game just doesn't have it, and that's, well, disappointing. And now I forgot what my earlier point was going to be. Like, again, you can really see it. Like, I mean, it gives me the impression that, he was probably going to be, like, talking to the, prisoner character. Like, I mean, the fact that he has some lines like, strap one on, kid, it's time to jam, like, gives me the impression that maybe the prisoner was, like, a bit more of a timid soul, and, you know, Bruce Willis was just there to sort of encourage him. I will say, though, like, this game is actually pretty fucking brutal. Like, I mean, you're setting these dudes on fire, and, you can hear their screams. This truly was the hatred of its day, and I don't think anybody even remembers that game anymore, despite the fact that it came out, like, a couple of years ago now. And I'm trying to remember what it was that I was thinking about, but, fudge it. I think it was something to do with, like, some of the music videos as well. Oh, crap, I don't remember. That's just how my brain operates, it just goes from 0 to 100 in 5 minutes. I will say that the tanks are probably one of the sorts of enemies that you want to save your big guns for, because, yeah, they're pretty heavy-hitting, and they're, well, not going to be doing much. There is also something else to talk about as well. Like, I mean, again, you do have health pickups, and checkpoints are fairly plentiful, and you do also have, smart bombs, which you can use as a bit of, like, an area clearing out kind of thing. If I could compare it to everything else, I'd say it's kind of like the, what was that move? It was from Ghost Rider, the PS2 game. It was like the, Spirit Bombs, I think, for the lack of a better phrase, so that might be a Dragon Ball thing. No, whatever. Basically, wipes out all the enemies on the floor, just acts as a nice little palate cleanser, you know? A screen new palate cleanser. And again, like, I mean, I guess to go back to the whole idea of this used future, like, I mean, what is really going on here? Like, is this what people have to deal with on a daily basis, and is the Reverend, like, trying to guide people? Again, I'm honestly got confused, and, like, I mean, I will say that, like, I mean, the environments are dynamic and active enough to keep you engaged, but, like, I mean, at the same time, like, this seems to be a very common occurrence, so what's really the story here? Like, I mean, I don't know, this, like, it might just seem like a very minor thing, but... Trick or treat! How apropos it's Halloween, but... Oh, well, it's a good thing you feel good, Bruce Willis, but do I feel good? You never ask about me! But yeah, we finally reached Trey Kincaid's lab, which, And again, as we learn in the upcoming cutscene, he has like a lab assistant named Larry who apparently died, I guess, when the police stormed his lab and just took down all his gadgets and all that kind of stuff. Again, it just, it is honestly got a curiosity as to what Trey had over, you know, the Reverend's schemes here. Like, I mean, was he, again, as we do later learn, he was consorting with satanic powers and all that kind of stuff, but, like, I mean, is this future ruled by Satanism, or is it one that's driven by science, but there's, like, a presence of religion that is against it? I'm very curious to see who wrote this game, because, like, I mean, I would legitimately like to know what sort of influences went into this game, and if there was going to be more that would have been implemented into the game had things been, you know, going as scheduled, but... excuse me. Guess we'll never know. Oh no. Massive destruction. Yeah, if there is anything positive I can say about this game, like, it has a very keen eye for, like, destruction, damage, and... Again, like, its action flow is fucking sick, dude. Yeah, finally the level's done. Anyway, enjoy the brief cutscene.
Regen tabs and get the hell out of here.
I knew you'd come back for me, Trey.
Larry! I thought you were dead!
Oh, yeah. I am the fires of damnation.
So, that's, well, again, that's basically one of the things related to the Four Horsemen. They're all related to Trey, and some, well, save for the final one, they're all related to, well, actually no, you know what, screw it, I thought I had a point, but I didn't. Anyway, Larry apparently has been made the, Embodiment of Death. Basically, all that means is that he just summons a bunch of, like, laser and lightning attacks. Again, nothing is really brought on to what exactly the Reverend's plan would have been had Trey been stopped. Like, would they have been there to cull the souls of the dead and fuel his empire? I have no idea. But again, the boss fights aren't really anything to really talk about either. Like, I mean, they're basically going to be him summoning little goons, summoning little AoE area of attacks, you know, with mines, and that kind of stuff, and then, you know, he'll just fire his laser beams at you, and basically all you gotta do is just jump and shoot, jump and shoot, jump and shoot, yippee-yo, kaye! And that's about it, just watch his health slither away. Like, again, it's not very dynamic, but I mean, there is enough to keep you engaged so that you're not falling asleep. But I will say it is one of the game's weaker aspects, so... yeah. And, like, I mean, this doesn't really change all that much for a lot of the other bosses. Like, I mean, they do have a few different, unique bits and pieces to them, as we'll be seeing in the upcoming parts, but... apart from that, the Four Horsemen are kind of simple to take care of. Like, I mean, you barely lost any health at that point, and you could easily take him down with your basic machine gun, so... whatever. Sucks to be you, Death. And, yeah, basically we get nothing more on Larry, whoever the hell he was, so, see you, bitch.
He's tricked the reactor! This place is about to go supernova!
So now we have, well again, admittedly it's another one of my favourite levels in the game, and it also does kind of feel very reminiscent of PS1 Spider-Man, you know, when they were kind of being chased by the helicopter. Again, this one's a little bit less intense, but again, I'm always a sucker for a good rooftop chase level, and this one's pretty sick, dude. I don't know, like, I mean, I will say that this level is a little bit long-winded for its own good, but I don't know. It's enjoyable, there's a lot to keep you engaged, a lot of stuff to blow up, and I'm a happy camper, to be honest. I don't really have much in terms of trivia for Apocalypse either, but there is one cool thing that I did learn rather recently, actually, and that this was also a bit of a test game, actually, for a specific game engine. A very famous one that you might recognize for a game that recently got a re-release. It's called Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, and I believe the second one as well, up until, like, 4 or whatever one went to the PS2. But yeah, this game was also a test for the new engine, which was basically how they, you know, programmed, like, FMV videos into the game, and, well, yeah, in terms of testing the engine, this game looks even pretty sweet, and even for a test, like, I mean, Apocalypse uses it quite well, and I believe they also used Trey Kincaid as, like, a test skater before they, the whole deal with Tony Hawk went down. So, yeah, the image of Trey Kincaid skateboarding, or Bruce Willis more specifically, is just amusing to me. I actually did bring mention to it a little bit earlier in terms of the in-game dialogue that you have with a lot of the goons. It's a very... I mean, I wouldn't say it's very Max Payne-esque, like, in terms of how they respond to you. Like, I mean, they do have, like, humorous quips of dialogue, like, "Medic, I have a wife and kids, please don't shoot." I don't know, I kind of feel like they probably could have gone a little bit further with this, but then again, I suppose that would have also had to have gone into the fact that this game would have had a few more game modes. I guess in another sense, like the PS1 Spider-Man game, like, in the sense that if you hung around, like, goons would have, like, a few things to say, like,
As soon as we capture Spider-Man, the sooner the boss pays us.
I don't know, just maybe something similar to that I think probably would have been a bit sick, but, you know. In terms of the only real new gimmicks you're going to be talking about here, it's basically the, like, Jesus Christ, I cannot fucking speak this afternoon. The rope hanging gimmick. There.
You finally got it right, you little ass.
But yeah, you're going to be hanging from ropes, and you can still shoot and do all the good stuff you could from there. It's just basically getting from point A to point B. Not much of a new mechanic, but I mean, hey, you get a nice sense of perspective, and again, from the way the camera's being handled here, it's used to decent effect, and also used as a blatant opportunity to show off some music videos. I guess I could also extend this to the soundtrack as well. I can't quite remember who was the composer. At a stretch, I want to say Tommy Taurico, but I believe there was also another one involved named, again, and I apologize for mispronouncing the name, because it's a bit foreign to my tongue, but it's Jihan Huan, I think? Again, but I mean, they were responsible for composing a lot of the main soundtrack, not this one, obviously, since this is composed by Poe with the track control. Yeah. But anyway, in terms of how the soundtrack is, it does sample bits and pieces from the music that they have, you know, in terms of licensing, but they also do have a very similar sort of, you know, heavy metal, alternative rock, you know, industrial kind of sound to it. Again, like, I mean, I will say it is very noticeably in-house, and, you know, it doesn't quite have the sense of, you know, like, hard rockin' or, like, memorable sort of tunes that I think a lot of people would have expected from a game like this, but it's not bad. And again, I suppose as, you know, Tommy Taurico will continue to work with Neversoft on Spider-Man and games like that, yeah, things would eventually start to improve. But I mean, the soundtrack, I'd say, isn't bad, but could have stood to have a few more, you know, rockin' tracks and all that kind of stuff. And again, also very similar to the PS1 Spider-Man. Wow, there is a lot of similarities between these two games, and I believe... I want to say that it was also done on the same engine as well, considering a lot of the animations and moveset also feel very reminiscent to that game as well. So, yeah. Apocalypse is quite an important game for Neversoft's catalog, such a shame that it never got any due respect, because, like, from a mythology standpoint, even though it doesn't capitalize on it, like, this universe is ripe for expansion, man. Like, I mean, if you wanted to save the Prisoner character for a sequel, yeah, I think that'd be the way to go, and even if you didn't have Bruce Willis on the payroll again, I don't know, like, maybe have his appearance, like, completely transformed and disfigured, like, you know, the demonic energy is fucking with him or something. I don't know, man. Like, you could do stuff with this. But in any case, onwards to new adventure. And by that I mean just the same old adventure, just with explosions and, blowing shit up. This game is very explosive, if you couldn't tell. Yeah, in terms of the threats you face, like again, you get a nice variety of, like, you know, sewer mutants to fucking, like, demonic creatures, and then also, like, soldiers, robots, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, the enemy variety is there, it's just that a lot of the methods of dealing with them are the same old, you know, just shoot to kill, blast down, and, whatever, jetpack people. Again, like, I mean, the game works in its simplicity, and really, there's not much you can say about it other than strap one on, it's time to jam. I have no idea why that's a repeated phrase, but needs must as the devil drive. And I guess also the sense of perspective of this game is also really nice as well. Like, I mean, again, while I would say that the levels are padded a little bit, like, you do get to traverse around a nice big chunk of the city. And to that effect, I also think it could have stood to have a few more recognizable landmarks besides, you know, billboards broadcasting music videos, like, I don't know, like, maybe have a few specific, like, assets just dotted about to kind of give each rooftop a bit more personality. I don't know, stuff like that I think would really help to sell the scope of the place and the fact that you are traversing towards your destination. Because, I mean, one of my favourite things in a lot of video games is usually when they have that sense of, you know, gradual progression, like you go from one area, you arrive in the next, and that's when the next level starts. I don't know, it's always fun to see stuff like that, and I think if you weren't going to do things in terms of story, I think at least creating assets and giving the illusion of world building would have been preferable than to, well, what we really have with a very undercooked world, so to speak. And, like, I mean, I don't know, like, I mean, you could have been selling as comedic as, like, I don't know, like, maybe having somebody having a barbecue on top of the rooftop, although, amidst all this chaos and explosions and that kind of stuff, or possibly having, like, you know, graffiti with, like, I don't know, God is dead or some shit. I don't know, just something to really kind of liven up and give a splash of personality as to, you know, what the daily grind and what the, you know, usual outing is for this kind of world, which seems very destructive in and of itself, but then again, that might just be gameplay to story segregation. I can't say for certain, but, either way, I would not want to live in a world like this. Well, then again, I say that, but this could quite easily be our future, and if recent events have taught me anything, it is quite likely. So, so I guess the only thing I can say is that only Bruce Willis can save us now. See, like, just look at that, man, like, I don't know. Like, this is really something I've got to applaud Neversoft for, especially considering the fact that the camera in a lot of PS1 games tended to be very, janky, since, like, about the most control you'd usually get is either with, like, the L2 button to kind of center it to the character, or, like, using the shoulder buttons to just, like, you know, flip things around and try and at least get a decent perspective. But again, Neversoft knew what was up, man. They knew how to work with the technology by having the camera pulled back and just giving you the best vantage point to see what you need to see, and again, like, I mean, most companies, like, I mean, I'd say even now, don't usually get that perspective in mind, so again, like, this is why Neversoft is sorely missed, man. Like, they were talented developers, but again, like, they eventually just got tacked on with a Guitar Hero, and, well, I mean, again, Call of Duty Ghost was pretty much their swan song, which was kind of a shame, because that game sucked, and, it's just kind of disappointing, to be perfectly honest. Like, I mean, I think the last original IP Neversoft had was, like, it was, like, Gun, but that was about it. Repeated instances of Poe's music video. How mysterious. I will say that Control is actually a pretty good song, and, I think the artist herself is actually pretty decent from what I've listened to. From what I remember, I think she got screwed over by her record company, which ended up keeping a lot of her royalties, which, again, kind of basically screwed her out of recording, like, literally anything else, so, yeah, kind of a shame she got completely fucked over, and I guess that is a little bit appropriate. Like, you sell your soul to the devil to get a record contract, and they will fuck you up, and, again, that's kind of a common story with a lot of bands, actually, how they get fucked over by record companies. But, I mean, if nothing else, like, I mean, if you're gonna be picking up Apocalypse, and especially considering her appearance later in the game, yeah, she'll always be remembered. If not by anyone else, then at least by me, I guess, because I play the game. Yeah, that's also something I did kind of allude to beforehand. Like, I mean, while I don't think a lot of people have been known to play this game, a lot of what I've heard from a lot of other people just consider it a disappointment, which I can partially see why. At the same time, though, I think the game is just generally fast-paced and fun to the point that... I don't know, like, I mean, what little reception it has is negative, and I don't think that's entirely warranted. I don't know. Like, I mean, would I put this in some of my favourite PS1 games? Honest to God, I'd still say probably in spite of its faults, but... I don't know. Like, there are a lot of things that are prevalent in terms of what this game does, and... well, I don't know. But again, I suppose that simplicity can also work against it, because, like, I mean, we are getting towards the end, obviously, but I mean, what else is there to really say? Other than just pick up bombs, shoot things, and bada bing, you do the thing. Bippity bop, bippity bop, bippity 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 bop. And I suppose to also address something, especially since the Resident Evil 3 commentary is really showing its crow's feet, especially from the time of recording, because I recorded that around about the point where, can't quite remember the specific month, but it was around the time when Paul Haddad passed away, and a lot of the stuff regarding, you know, Resident Evil 8, and, like, the rumoured Resident Evil 4 remake that I was kind of pissy about. Again, I still hold those similar feelings, but again, I don't think that's really happening. At least so far. Again, I'm not entirely too sure what they're going to be doing with that sort of thing, but... again, that just kind of shows its age in places. I mean, I will say that Doom 3 and especially Apocalypse are recorded much closer to the October season. But, yeah. Not really too much to say about that in terms of, behind the scenes kind of stuff. There's... well, I suppose to talk about anything else in regards to Apocalypse, in terms of, like, review content, I think mine is, like, one of the few reviews I've actually seen of the game. Like, I mean, I've seen a few behind-the-scenes videos, but I think this game actually has kind of been lost to the sands of time. Like, I mean, I've not really seen much of anyone really talking about this. And I guess a lot of that is probably down to the fact that it doesn't really have, like, a lot of meme potential, which is what a lot of people are looking for these days, or that the game in question just doesn't really seem to have that sort of zest. Like, in terms of, like, being a lost classic. Well, excuse me. And I suppose overall it's just one of those games that was and is just lost to the annals of time, really. I don't know, it just seems kind of bizarre to me that, you know, a game packing so much style, I guess, is just very much a relic of its time, to the point where not a lot of people really want to see a redux. And I mean, I suppose I could kind of understand that, because, like, I mean, I don't think this game would really benefit that much from a remake, unless, of course, they were going to go, like, completely overhauling it to the point where it loses its identity, so to speak, so... yeah, guess it's just there to be left as a relic of its day. So, yeah. I mean, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the level being very kind of long-winded. Like, I mean, there are a few later levels that I think suffer that a little bit worse than this one, but at the same time, like, I mean... it's another example of one of those games that's a little bit more fun to play than it is to watch. And again, that is also an issue I also encountered with Nightmare Creatures 2, which was what I was initially going to have in place of Apocalypse. Excuse me, Jesus Christ, my throat's giving out. But again, the reason why I didn't end up covering Nightmare Creatures 2 was because while I do like the game, and while that is very atmospheric in tone, I ended up not really having much to say because of a lot of its content just being very, what you see is what you get, which again, I don't think is necessarily bad in spite of what some reviewers have said about Nightmare Creatures 2, but at the same time, though, when it comes to a commentary, you gotta pick your battles about what you have to say and what you really don't have to say, so that's always an important balance to keep in mind when you're going to be talking about a game. Like, I mean, do you have enough to say about it? Do you have something interesting to bring to the table? And more to the point, if it is very sparse in terms of content and things that you do have to say, how do you stay on topic and how do you keep it relatively relevant to what you're seeing? And again, like, I mean, that's definitely a lesson I learned the hard way with, you know, Doom 3, especially in the early days when I was very inexperienced and kind of out of it. But I mean, I'd say by the time of Doom 3 The Lost Mission, which you're probably seeing right now as well, again, I think I've definitely gotten a little bit better about that kind of stuff. But again, it's all about what you do to keep people engaged, and again, I do think this level probably could have ended far sooner than it did, but alas, we're finally at the home stretch, and this chopper is basically nothing really. Just use the pulse laser, bada bing, you do the thing, and it will be taken down. So on that note, I'm Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and next time on the Apocalypse commentary, we'll basically be moving onwards and upwards. Catch you dudes and dudettes later.